In today's episode. Hey John, can I have a chew? So, help me to understand. If only they'd double-check the spelling. So let's get started. Hey John, can I have a chew? First let me say, this is not my story, but came to me from my grandfather. I will also say, I am in my late 60s and this story actually took place in the 1930s in West Texas, USA. This was during what we call the Great Depression. My grandfather is John. During the Great Depression, my grandfather was one of the less impacted people. He was a farmer/rancher who also had a job working for the county. His primary job was operating a road maintainer. In more modern times we, in America, would call it a road grader. He also worked as a powder monkey, which was a common slang term for a person who worked with explosives. Sometimes he would have to work on a road gang, which is a group of people who would clean out the ditches on the side of the road. I know, in the movies this job has often been portrayed as something only prisoners perform, but that is not always the case. I know that is a lot of background, but this is where the story starts. For several weeks one summer my grandfather, John, was working on a road gang of maybe 20 men. Most of these men knew each other as they had all lived in the county for years. My grandfather chewed plug tobacco and everyone who knew him knew that he always had some with him, including most of the men on the road gang. One day another man who was working on the road gang approached my grandfather and asked if he could get a chew of tobacco. My grandfather cut a bite-sized piece from his plug and gave it to the other man. At that time, the county only paid their employees once a month, on the last day of the month. My grandfather said this incident began 2 days before payday. The next day the man asked again, for a chew of tobacco, and my grandfather cut him a piece from his plug. On payday, the man asked a third time for a chew and my grandfather gave it to him thinking the man would buy his own tobacco after he was paid. On the day after payday the other man called to my grandfather and said, "Hey John, can I have a chew?" My grandfather, thinking the other man might just be wanting to get free tobacco, cut him a chew from his plug. Malicious compliance starts here. Before work started on the second day after payday, my grandfather talked to a friend of his who also worked on the road gang. My grandfather said everyone knew this friend did not use any kind of tobacco. My grandfather asked this friend to hold a new plug of tobacco for him, saying he would let him know when to give it back. Everyone on the road gang knew by this time that the other man had been getting tobacco from my grandfather. The ones who knew him well also knew he would not tolerate this for long. A few hours into the day the other man called out to my grandfather, "Hey John, can I have a chew?" All of the other men were waiting to see how long my grandfather would continue to provide this man with tobacco. They all watched to see what would happen. My grandfather told the other man he could have a chew and pulled a part of a plug from his pocket. This part of a plug was large enough to have 2, maybe 3 chews remaining. My grandfather cut off a chew and gave it to the man. After the other man put the chew in his mouth, my grandfather held up the piece remaining and said, "Looks a little dry, doesn't it?" At this point my grandfather unzipped his fly and urinated on the remaining part of the plug. He then said, "That looks about right, don't you think?" He then placed the remaining part of the tobacco plug back into his pocket. My grandfather said all of the other men who had been waiting to see what would happen started laughing loudly. The man who had been asking for tobacco spit it out and was continuing to spit in an effort to clean his mouth. Remember, my grandfather gave him the chew before urinating on the remainder. When my grandfather wanted another chew, he went to his friend and asked for his new plug. He removed the part he had urinated on from his pocket and threw it onto the ground. My grandfather said that man never asked anyone on that road gang for tobacco or anything else that would be put into his mouth after that. So, help me to understand. We used to have a 2004 Kia Sedona van. At this point, it was over 10 years old with over 100k miles on it. It was geriatric, but it was our only vehicle, so what could we do? One day, the car won't turn over. We had recently bought a new battery from the big box mart store, you know what I mean. New batteries come with a warranty of either 6 months or a year. Whatever it was, we were right inside of it. It's a Sunday and my husband is due at swing shift the next afternoon for the IRS. Something he definitely cannot miss. So he gets the battery out, puts it in a bag, and helps me load it into my carry-on suitcase. Why? I had a bus pass from college and I could ride for free. The closest store with a tire lube express center was about 5 miles away if you drove, but because it's a bus, it'll take me 20+ minutes to get down there. I ask my driver to drop me off on the north side of the light, courtesy stop, so I'm not forced to walk far to get to the store. It was off the main road a bit, which isn't so bad when you're in a car. But it's a lot when you're pulling a suitcase, in the heat, with a heavy battery, the same size as one for a truck. He said no one pulls up to the main stop, which adds a half mile of walking to my trip. I ain't never had a courtesy stop denied unless it was a safety concern, like the driver would be impeding traffic. I get that, but this had me frustrated. I'm a big chick with genetically cursed knees, the reason I'm big, so walking is more difficult for me. So it's hot, the suitcase helped with some of the weight, thank you physics and leverage, but I'm sore and salty by the time I make it all the way into the back of the store, having been checked by employees 3 times because I'm wheeling in a suitcase before I even made it into the back. Simple request to the attendant, will you test my battery for me? Attendant tests it and it comes back fine. Nothing wrong with it, so it doesn't warrant a replacement. Well, obviously there's something wrong or my van would at least click when I tried to start it. I got nothing at all. Sorry, my equipment says it's fine. Whatever, I'm ready to be done. The tire place closes in less than an hour, and I had to time it perfectly to get my bus home and all the walking involved. Thankfully, the return stop was closer, but I didn't know that at the time. What else could I do? Me to attendant, well, could you just put it in the charger for me then? Attendant, it won't be fully charged by the time we close. Me, that's fine. Understanding my alternator could take care of it, I am not a helpless chick when it came to cars. So she throws it on the charger, and I sit down in the designated waiting area so I won't miss her when she comes back out. It happened before, and I lost a tire that way. Long story. About 15 minutes later she comes out without my battery, which I thought was odd because they're now T-10 minutes to closing. Attendant to me, so I put your battery on the charger and the charger won't connect to it. Me, what does that mean? I know enough about cars, not electronics and battery power storage. Attendant, it means I can't charge your battery for you today. I am beyond frustrated knowing that my van takes a truck-sized battery, and was therefore at least $135 for the cheapest one they had at stock. Thankfully, my ADHD makes my brain run mega fast, and it helped me out for a change. QMC. Me to attendant, why does your machine fail to connect to a battery? What are the reasons? Attendant, it's either the leads on the machine, which we checked, or the battery itself. I'm sorry. Me, so does that mean my battery is faulty? Attendant doesn't say anything. Me, logically, despite what your first machine said, my battery not being able to charge means it's faulty, and as I am in warranty, I'm due a replacement, right? With a huff and an obvious eye roll, the attendant tells me she'll be right back, and by about 5 minutes after closing, she's helping me pack a new battery into my suitcase in time for me to get the next bus back home. MC2, the attendant warns me that the warranty exists from the original battery's purchase date. The new battery had a sticker on it that stated it was purchased several months later. The attendant said that this was in order to comply with state law and notify us of possible recalls. Within 2 months, we had moved to the opposite end of the county, and our battery is freaking out again. We take it to a different mart, now with a new car to assist us, and they don't question the sticker despite our original warranty having expired already. We got 3 batteries for the cost of 1. Also, the attendant at that store, fully disclosing that he was about to quit, told me that the original battery was just such crap, get what you pay for, I guess. He, being the manager of this particular store's lube center, authorized everyone that brought in that type of battery would get a better quality battery replacement instead. If my old battery was a 2 of 5, this new one was a 4 of 5. It lasted until my van went to the scrapper. Rest in peace, old girl. If only they'd double-check the spelling. I worked for a while at a fast food restaurant in a major city. One of my coworkers had the same last name as me. It's a relatively common Irish name. Our family spelled it differently. Shane, my coworker, sold weed in addition to doing deliveries for the restaurant. Shane was a really nice, chilled guy and was always the first to jump in and give someone a hand even if it wasn't his job, so everyone liked him. I'm working the register one day when 2 police detectives come in. They literally flipped their coats open to show me their badges, which I thought was a thing that only happened in movies. Detective 1, does anyone named Sean, our shared last name, work here? I know they have to be looking for Shane, but he's a nice guy, so. Edited to clarify, Shane is pronounced Shane, Sean is pronounced Sean. Me, my name is, last name. Detective 2, we're actually looking for a Sean, last name. Me, smiles politely. Long pause. Detective 2, do you know anyone named Sean, last name? Me, yeah. I have a cousin named Sean. Detectives, suddenly more interested. Detective 1, and when did you see him last? Me, about a week ago. Detective 2, he doesn't work here? Me, no. Detective 1, we were told he works here. Does he work at a different restaurant name? Me, watches out the window as my coworker Shane ride away on his bike to make a delivery. Me, no. I mean, I could check with my aunt, but I don't think so. He's still in school. Detective 2, and where does he go to school? Me, name, middle school. Detectives, stare at me. Me, stares at detectives. Detective 2, does anyone named Sean, last name, work here? Me, no. Detectives, give me business card for me to give to my manager. Detectives, leave. Me, text Shane, hey, I think a couple of cops were here looking for you. I was 20 at the time and definitely too much of a wimp to lie to the police, but I never had to. Everything I told them was 100% true. I do have a cousin named Sean, last name. No one named Sean, last name, worked at that restaurant. Thanks for watching.